See the love. laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life.
So tonight is a youth service, as you could probably tell, although something that warms my heart, and I hope it does to you as well, but there's like, I know I shouldn't have pride, but I have like a super like proud youth pastor moment when I see like youth kids serving in the worship team. Yeah, it's fantastic to see. There is some incredible talent in that group. And there's more here that it's summer, people are away, and you know how it goes. But yes, we are a very blessed church with the talent that we have. Okay, so this is a youth service, and tonight I want to take some time to talk specifically about the next generation of the church. It's something that I tend to talk about a lot because it's something that, to me, it's important, and when I look ahead into the future of the church, the capital C church in North America, personally, I see some gaps forming, and it's scary to me. The numbers that I see, the statistics that you can look up and find online, these are scary numbers about like forecasting what the church might look like in the next 10 or 20 years. And I'm worried that if we just continue doing the things the way we've been doing them for the last 10, 20 years, that we're just going to speed that up if we just stick to the status quo and just stick to what we are currently doing. And so tonight, I'm going to talk about the next generation. The next generation is the one who follows after my generation, and that is Gen Z. So I have a slide up here that, yeah, good, it fits, okay. So this is a breakdown. I'm sure you've heard a lot of these terms before. We have Gen Z at the bottom. That's the one I'm going to be talking the most about. That is like the people who are currently in youth and even some young adults, although some of the young adults sort of blend into my generation, my age gap, which is the millennials. My parents would be Gen X, my grandparents, baby boomers, and before that, is not usually a term for it, but pre-war, that one works as well. These are rough because I know some people who are technically Gen Z, but they fit more into what I would tend to think of as millennial and all around. But this is sort of the agreed upon age gap. And so if someone says those lazy millennials, they're talking about like me and my friends. And when we talk about like Gen Z, we're talking about like the youth and some of the young adults today. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. If I use this term Gen Z, I'm talking about Generation Z, I guess in Canada, but I'm going to say Z, Gen Z, and I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of what that is. So Gen Z includes those who were born between 1996 and roughly 2010. They're the generation, like I said, who comes immediately after my generation, the millennials. So who are Gen Z? Well, let's take a look. They are the largest current generation in terms of population. They're smaller than us, but their numbers are greater than ours, okay? They are digital natives, which means that they have always had access to the internet. My generation, I grew up, I remember getting like dial-up. We had like Bell Simpatico dial-up. I remember the day when we got internet at home. And it would if someone called, it would kick you off the internet and all of that. Gen Z and Generation Alpha, I think they're calling like the next generation, although I don't think that's been entirely identified yet. But some people call that the iPad generation. So like my kids wouldn't be Gen Z, they would be Generation Alpha or whatever they're going to call it. They have grown up, Gen Z and Generation Alpha, with the internet, having quick access to the internet. They're also, you might have noticed this, they're also growing up at a much faster rate than previous generations, which is scary for someone with kids to see. And if they wanted to, they could speak entirely in emojis. I'm learning some things, and yeah. Some of the emojis that I use are like old-fashioned now, so I have to stay up to speed with what's going on. ministry to Gen Zs is more challenging than previous generations. And you know, you might just think that I'm saying that because I'm like looking for excuses or I'm looking for, reasons why numbers are scary and all of that. But these more demanding expectations that the Gen Z is experiencing, I'm not saying that you never experienced demanding expectations yourself growing up and going to college or getting your job or getting a house, all of those things. I know those were difficult, but there's like, it feels different, to put it for lack of a better term. It feels different to Gen Z. It feels like it's all being piled on to them right now at a much younger age. Like I said before, they're growing up at a younger age. They're starting to make these like major life decisions at like early points. Like by grade 10, you take careers class in high school, you're expected to know what your career is going to be. I didn't know. This is embarrassing. I literally failed grade 10 careers because for my thing, I chose international rock star. And there's not school, you can't do the program, you can't do all the course material with that because there's no schooling, there's no, like it just, bad idea. Failed, went back, took it again, passed, obviously. I followed all the rules the second time. But I was expected to pick in grade 10 what I wanted to be for the rest of my life. And that's, again, like I said, it's seemingly amplifying for them. In some cases, this increased pressure, it comes from getting into a particular school. Because with the demand for certain jobs, employers, they're not interested in anyone, because the pile of options of candidates out there is so great that they're only picking from the very top of that list. And so now it's like you've got to be the top of your class, but you've got to be in the school and be the top of your class. And they're feeling that pressure. Or for some, it's like insane expectations for teenagers when it comes to like sports, like hockey or dance or gymnastics. We're Canadian, so a good example would be like the NHL, right? If you plan to make it to the NHL, you don't start when you're an adult, right? You start when you are like a very little young child. Think of like Connor McDavid, right? And like the stories of him shooting in the basement, denting his mom's washer or dryer or whatever it was. And like that doesn't just happen. He didn't just wake up one day in his teenage years or in his adult life. I don't even know if he's an adult yet. And I want to be a professional athlete. It doesn't happen that way. It starts at a very young age. And now like sports science will dictate like what to eat and how to work out and sleep routines. And these kids are in high school, and they're trying to keep up with their high school work. Meanwhile, their focus is on making it to the NHL. Even though there's a 1 in 4,000 chance. Think of how many kids are on their hockey team. Think about how many hockey teams there are. There's a 1 in 4,000 chance that this student, teenager, young person, is going to have a steady job in the NHL. So while they're trying to go through school, trying to figure out who they are as a person, they're also focused on basically winning the lottery, being 1 in 4,000 and having a chance. And they have to keep this charade up as long as they can, because as soon as they don't, they're out of the running. But maybe if they're not even dreaming big like that, what about the thought of maybe one day, maybe hopefully pulling together enough money to make a down payment and then the regular mortgage payments for a house? With average house prices being close to 10 times higher than the average income in the GTA, it seems almost literally impossible for someone who's making part-time working at Tim Hortons to ever one day own a house. And you might think, well, they've got so many years to figure that out. I know, we know that. But for them, it's a big deal right now. And so you take all of that, and then you mix it with the usual teenage issues like hormonal changes. And it's no wonder why anxiety and depression are at an all-time high among adolescents. Now, you take all of that and you just try to sprinkle some religion on top. You just try to attend church every once in a while and just hope that it all magically gets better. And I think it starts to explain why 2 studies conducted by both Barna and USA Today found that nearly 75% of Christian young people leave the church after high school. 75%. 20% of those who were surveyed, 20% of young adults say that God is absent from their church experience. They're going to church, but they don't feel like they're experiencing God. 25% of them will say that their faith or faith in general is irrelevant. 18% self-identify as having no faith or being atheist. 35% believe that church is hypocritical. And so I believe that ministry to this next generation is hypercritical. It's always been important, but it feels like, especially now, it's like the numbers are really getting scary. And so, of course, I believe that ministry to the next generation is critical, but I want you to see what I'm seeing as well. Because we're at a very crucial moment in history, and there's a warning in Judges chapter 2, verse 10. You can put it up there. After that generation died, another generation grew up who did not acknowledge the Lord or remember the mighty things he had done for Israel. If you've read the Old Testament, you know we almost laugh at how often the Israelites mess up and they come crying back to God, and God does a miracle thing for them, and then they kind of just fall back to their old ways. And here's a warning, okay? That after that generation died, another generation grew up who did not acknowledge the Lord or remember the mighty things that he had done for Israel. This is the warning for our next generation. We are always one generation away from losing the Christian faith. We are always, from baby boomers, Gen Z, Gen X, we will continue to always be, I'm not saying anything that's new here. We are one generation away from losing the Christian faith. Now, let's be clear. I'm definitely not here to bash Gen Z. I love the kids and students in Generation Z. But I'm also not here to blame parents. I'm not here to hurt anyone or point blame or make anyone feel bad. My hope is to give a statistical profile of the reality of what's going on in case you were unaware. And so to make my point, let me paint a picture from my childhood, and I think you can probably relate. When I was growing up, we would have any family get-together, Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving, or just whenever we decided to get together, when all my aunt and uncles would be there and all of my cousins would be there. There's a lot of people in the house. And so a table would get set up in the dining room, but that was for the adults. That had the nice cutlery, the nice place settings, the nice comfy chairs, and there was carpet on the floor, and so the sound didn't echo around in there. It was like the perfect dining experience for a family get-together. And then somewhere off, either in the kitchen or the basement or somewhere else in the house, was a card table with way too many folding chairs piled in around it. Can anyone relate to? Yeah? Okay. And so the kids, we would find ourselves at this card table, not being allowed to go to the adult table where everything is nice, and they might even have some better food selection than what we have. And so every year, as I would get older, as I'm on my way or as families coming over to our house to have this get-together, I'm hoping maybe this time I'm big enough, I'm old enough, I'm mature enough to sit at the adult table. Maybe this is the time, right? Partially, I wanted that because then I would get a comfortable seat. I would get some elbow room, and I'd be able to eat my food comfortably. But I also wanted to be a part of the adult conversation. There was something, when I was a kid, I didn't care about it. It was boring. I just wanted to go to the basement and play Nintendo 64 or toys or whatever we were doing. But then it got to the point where that kind of lost interest, and I kind of wanted to be up with the parents, listening in on their adult conversation. Listening to my uncle tell his bad holiday-themed dad jokes, hearing everyone getting caught up on what's happened since the last time we were together. And so even though I wouldn't add much to the conversation, just being a part, when I finally got the invite to that adult table, just being a part of that made me feel like I never want to go back to the kids' table. There was something special. I felt mature. I felt like important. I felt like an adult. Can I ask you something? Do we do similar things with our children and youth when they're in church? Do we banish them to the kids' table while we all gather around the adult table? Do we do similar things when it comes to like their faith development? Let's put on VeggieTales. The adults are having a real conversation. I love VeggieTales. I give VeggieTales such a hard time, but are we inadvertently and accidentally slowing the faith development of children and teens by not inviting them to the adult table of our faith discussions, the faith development or discipleship? Many churches around the world leave the responsibility of ministering to kids and youth entirely up to kids ministry or youth ministry and its leaders. We delegate, we pass off that responsibility to the staff or to the volunteers. I understand why we do this. We do this here at Cedarview. I'm not being too critical about our own church, but I'm seeing some gaps. This is unfortunate. If we just delegate, if we push all the responsibility off to people who see your kids, our kids, for like 1 hour a week, 2 hours a week, 3 hours a week. Passing on the faith to the next generation is the responsibility of the entire church. And so I have a challenge for you. Please pass the faith. Imagine sitting at the adult table, pass the potatoes down, pass the gravy down. Please pass the faith. Just like I longed for the conversation that was out of reach at the other table, there's some incredibly rich spiritual influence here at the table today. And as the church, we need to pass the faith. I believe that God is at work now and is still relevant today, just like he was when we read in the Bible. I believe in the promises of God and the truth that's revealed in the Bible. I believe that God sets people free, 2 Corinthians 3:17. Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. I believe that there is hope for a hopeless and confused world, Romans 15:13. Now may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you believe, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. And if I believe and if I follow Jesus, I am to share the good news with others, Mark 16:15. Then he said to them, go into all the world and preach the gospel to just the adults. No, into all creation. I can't hold it in. I must tell others. I must pass on the faith, even if they're younger than me. Passing the faith, sharing the good news, these are terms that kind of scare us. What does that even look like? That seems like a lot of work. That seems like something that like a pastor should be doing or someone who's gone to Bible college. Christians unnecessarily freak out when we talk about sharing our faith, when we talk about evangelism. Before you check out mentally, or you start thinking about your upcoming work week or what you're going to watch on TV tonight, just listen, please. Let's look at Psalm 145, and let's look at what this has looked like in the past and can continue to look like. Psalm 145, verses 4-7. One generation will declare your works to the next and will proclaim your mighty acts. I will speak of your splendor and glorious majesty and your wondrous works. They will proclaim the power of your awe-inspiring acts, and I will declare your greatness. They will give a testimony of your goodness and will joyfully sing of your righteousness. So passing on the faith means that we talk about what God has done in our lives, well, in this case, to the next generation, to those who are younger than us. Or the psalm specifically says that we proclaim, we declare, we sing the great goodness of God. Your job, and literally my job, is to pass it along. It's good. This is good news that we have. So pass it along, share it. And if we do that, if we pass it along, we will have a thriving faith community. We will have a thriving church. Now, what does it look like to have a thriving church or a thriving faith community? I'm glad you asked. Let's pretend that you asked. So let's talk about that. What does that look like? You remember that generational timeline that I showed you before with all the different age gaps? Yes, that one. Good job, Connor. We have these generations represented at our church. Every age gap, I'm pretty sure. Our greatest strength in reaching the next generation as a church lies in the diversity of our church. There's plenty of trendy churches out there doing anything and everything they can to stay on top of the next trend. And doing that tends to attract a younger, maybe more trendy crowd. But there's a flaw in that. If you're only attracting younger people, where's the spiritual maturity coming from? The variety of ages that we have represented here at Cedarview is not a bad thing. Seeing churches sort of explode, these trendy, fun, hip churches explode in numbers is fine, but it's like a flash in the pan. It's like a sizzle. It doesn't last. So don't scoff at the fact that we have older and younger people here. This is a great thing. Now, because of that wider variety of ages, there will be things that we get caught up on, like differences, like worship style or different preferences in terms of how we want a worship service to be performed. We all hear complaints about how long or how high some of the songs we sing are. But being here together, it's not about worship styles and preferences at all. During times like this, when we're all gathered together, we are inviting the younger ones to the adult table. The range of ages and experiences is just what our community needs. However, churches are notoriously lousy at including and accepting children and teenagers. Here's an actual quote taken from a church's weekly bulletin. We kindly ask each person's help in limiting distractions during the church service. It is our desire to provide distraction-free ministry at all services. Therefore, while in the sanctuary, please turn off your cell phones. We request that children under the age of 12 attend their age-appropriate classes for their benefit and that of the entire body. Did you catch that? This church has just publicly stated that children are distractions related to, similar to, cell phones. And that they need to be silenced or put away into a room upstairs or away from the adults so that church can happen. As we continue to grow and live into this potential of being this multi-generational church that cares deeply about sharing the faith with the next generation, we need to pause for a minute and think, what might that actually, it sounds great. Sounds great on the outside, but what does that actually look like? Think about it. That might mean that there's a baby in service who came in while they were asleep, and now they're fussing, and their parents are panicking. I've been in this situation. Their parents are panicking, trying to do everything they can think of to calm that baby down to not disrupt the service. Are you okay with that? Will you show them mercy and grace? It's a different story if the kid's just wailing at the top of its lungs and the parent's just like, well, I'm just here for church, and that's a different story. But when the parent's like literally sweating as they're like sticking their finger in their mouth and like cover them and get the soother in there and get them covered in the blanket and running out of the service. I just saw my wife go out earlier and seeing her take Shepherd out, like, I know what this feels like. Are you okay? Will you show grace and mercy? How about this? There will be youth in the service. Maybe they're sitting a row in front of you who only just started staying in the sanctuary since now they're going to Ignite in the fall. They might turn to their parents and talk to their parents and ask them 100 questions about what is taking place in the service. Are you okay with that? Thank you. Trust me, listen to this. They're okay with your phone going off in your purse or pocket and you taking a minute or two to realize, oh, that's my cell phone, and then panicking, trying to press every button on the thing to get it to stop making noise. They will show you mercy and grace. Will you show them mercy and grace? Are you comfortable if things potentially get broken in the church? Are we okay with noise and movement? Having kids and youth in our church means we must be comfortable with a little bit of chaos. But we must extend grace with the crying and mercy when something gets broken or not used the way it was intended to. Are we prepared as a church to do what it takes to continue passing the faith to the next generation? You might recognize these verses from Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 to 9. The Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. These words that I'm giving you today are to be in your heart. Repeat them to your children. Talk about them when you sit in your house and when you walk along the road and when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand and let them be a symbol on your forehead. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your city gates. This daily Jewish prayer is used because of its incredible importance. But it didn't lessen its importance as we transfer into the New Testament. It wasn't left behind. Oh, that's Old Testament. We're in the New Testament. We got a new. No. In fact, Jesus himself emphasized this passage during his ministry on earth. Mark chapter 12, verses 28 to 30. One of the scribes approached. When he heard them debating and saw that Jesus answered them well, he asked him, "Which command is the most important of all?" Jonathan mentioned this morning. Jesus answered, "The most important is listen, Israel. Listen, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and all your strength." It's like supposed to be like a hyperlink back to, I remember that. Deuteronomy, Old Testament. Whoa, I see what he's doing here. It's almost like there's a reason why Pastor Don reads from this passage at every baby dedication that he does. There's serious value in these words. Next slide. It should be the Deuteronomy one again. Yeah. We'll go back one more. That one. Okay. There's some serious stuff going on here. Repeat them to your children. Talk about them when you sit in your house and when you walk along the road, when you lie down, when you get up. There's not a lot left out in those examples there. Parents are called by God to be the primary spiritual advisors, nurturers, and guides for their children. Parents are called by God to be the primary spiritual advisors, nurturers, and guides for their children. Not a pastor, not a youth leader, not a Sunday school teacher. In terms of teaching children the faith and helping youth develop a lifelong faith that will last, the responsibility, first and foremost, falls on the shoulders of the parents. I'm a parent. I can say this now. And I could say more about that, but that's a whole topic for another day. The important point that I'm trying to make tonight is that we all share a similar responsibility when it comes to passing on this faith, rising up the next generation. Whether you have kids or not, we all share that responsibility. So let me give you some practical ways that we can all pass the faith. One of the simplest and most practical ways you can get involved is to just pray for our kids and for our youth here at Cedarview. Every single one of you can do that. That's an easy one. Another practical way that you can pass on the faith is to serve. And here's the great thing about serving. It looks very different in all the different areas of the church. I would love to see a day when like half of the adults in our church are serving in like kids or youth ministry. What a dream that would be. But maybe you don't, let me just pause for a minute. I didn't plan on doing this, but this is important. You might think that youth ministry, are like the leaders that we have in youth ministry, like the young, trendy, hip, cool-looking ones are like the best leaders, and you could never fit that mold, and so you'll just leave it for someone cooler and younger and all that. But you're wrong. The best leader, I'm sorry, my younger leaders, I still love you, but the best leaders I have ever had in youth ministry are the old people. You can guess at what ages I'm talking about. I don't want to disrespect Andy. They really are. And so if you feel that it can't be you, I can't help in kids, I can't help in youth because I'm not cool enough, I'm not young enough, I'm not, excuses. I'm sorry, I love you, but excuses. You would be the best youth leader, I promise you. Now, maybe you don't have time for that. That's a real thing, I understand. Or maybe you don't have the physical capacity anymore. You've sort of aged out. Although Dennis Ragg does youth ministry. Okay? Okay? Yeah. Yeah. Or maybe more realistic, you just don't like kids. And so it's not for you. I understand, okay? There are some cases where I understand. And so one of the simplest ways that you can support our children or youth ministries is just to continue to tithe and give offering. And I would encourage you, next time you do that, think about the kids you are supporting here in our church when you write that check or when you give online. If we're going to successfully pass the faith, we do all those things, yes, but we also need to be aware of the gaps that exist in our current ministries. And so do you want to know some of those gaps that I believe exist? I've sort of hinted at them. Because there's a group for every age, marital status, or gender, we are losing the wealth that comes from generations of the church worshiping together. If our Sunday service caters to an older, more spiritually mature audience, the answer is not a separate youth service. Instead, we should be helping those youth, those young people up to our level. Why not? Why not talk about what took place in the service when you are together after the service at lunch or some other time during the week? Talking about the sermon, for instance, means that the kids who are sitting in the sermon need to be paying attention to what's being said, right? It's a good sort of test to see how well they're listening. But this also means that parents need to pay attention and to listen if they're going to be asking the questions to their kids, right? So when you're talking to kids, here's another thing. If you have kids, you know this. But if you don't have kids, you don't have to be afraid of the hard questions. Everyone's always worried that, like, if you start talking to a young person about faith and they're going to ask you some, like, insane question, some stumper that you've never encountered before, and you don't know what you're going to say, and you're going to panic and freeze. When I worked at Apple, they taught me an incredible skill. And how in the world do these relate? You'll see. If a customer asked me a question and I didn't know the answer, I was instructed to say, I don't know. Let's find out together. And then it was also important to then spend some time looking things up, maybe on a nearby computer, or maybe asking someone who'd been around longer to see if they knew the answer to the question. And doing this, at first, it sort of seemed a little bit forced because, you want to seem like you've got all the answers and everything figured out. But then what ended up happening when I got used to doing this was two things. First, the customer got their answer they're looking for, but it also means that I never misled the customer and told them something that I maybe thought was true but ended up not being true. And I've said this before, I'm usually not concerned about the students who ask me hard questions. I'm more concerned about the ones who don't ask any questions at all and just seem to be along for the ride. And I need your help reaching those ones in particular. You might ask me to call them, text them, do whatever. Plan to Protect might say that I can't do that, but you want me to do that. But if I can't build that relationship with them, then I hit a dead end. I need your help reaching especially those ones. God has equipped us as a church to pass the faith to others. Each of us has a role to play. What is your role? Prayerfully consider how God wants you to pass the faith. We are all different. We all have different skills and interests. We don't need 500 Pastor Dons. That would not be helpful. You have been gifted and will be equipped by the Holy Spirit for ministry. Equipped, not equipped. No matter what the ministry that you get involved in looks like. Jesus is urging you to just follow him where he's leading you. And I hope that by now you're not only asking, what can the pastor do? Or what can the youth leaders do? Or what can the church board do? Or what sort of programs can we develop to fix this? I hope instead you're asking, what can I do? What can I do so that the youth who sat in front of me during this morning's worship service has the odds stacked in their favor for being able to stick it out with Jesus throughout the entirety of their life? What can I do so that the youth sitting across the sanctuary from me will not just become another number of someone who went to church but then stopped? Whatever you do, please pass the faith. Remember, the goodness of God is right in front of you. Don't hoard it or keep it to yourself. Talk to a kid or to a youth that's already in your life. Tell them what God has done in your life. Pray for them by name. Whatever you do, please pass the faith. Let's pray. And so, God, this is a job for all of us to share the good news that we have. And so I pray that we don't freak out or panic because they're younger than us or that we don't know what they might say, but that we just trust in you. As we share the good things, all the goodness of you, all the good that you've done in our lives, as we share that with them, that they would begin to ask even more questions and look to you to be their personal Lord and Savior. Make the decision themselves to trust in you and to follow you all the days. So I pray that this is a wealthy church with generational wealth, that we can pull the young ones up to our level and keep them focused on you and aimed towards you. Let us not cause any of them to stumble, but let us pull them all closer to you. In your name we pray.